And good evening, everyone, and welcome into the program Tigers Tonight. I'm your host, John Maddox, joined as always by the best co-host in all the land. We'll start with our friend who is actually in the palatial Marley Manor, which is just a few moments away from Maddox Estates over here in Hernando, Mississippi. Larry, how in the world are you this evening?
I'm glad to be home. I got to be honest with you guys. The last couple of times, I've done one in New York. I've done one in transit between Atlanta, and then at the in-laws' house. So it is good to be home. And I'm glad the season started. I think we all have a similar feeling about Saturday, but I'm probably going to surprise you guys with my take on this game. So I think I'm going to surprise some people.
Bryan, how are things for our northern branch office up there?
Doing pretty good. Weather's getting a little cooler, so I'm enjoying myself. Fall's in the air. Can't wait for it. I love
All
it.
right, so let's kind of go through this real quick, Bryan. We'll start with you. 49-23, the final score. Memphis falls to Mississippi State on Saturday, and if you look at the first half and second half, it was really the tale of two halves. But Memphis was as atrocious as I can ever remember a Memphis team being in that first half.
Yeah, that first half was absolutely terrible. I looked a little bit just to see if I could find a worst half. You have to go back at least 10 years, in my opinion, if not more. I stopped looking because I'm like, it's who cares at this point? I mean, everyone knows it was a terrible half, and it just I don't think you could get much worse. What was it? 29 yards total offense. I mean, it was pitiful. But I was on a different show today, and I talked about it. If you break it down in two halves, that first half, just throw it out the window. I mean, it was garbage. You were 0 for 5 from third downs. I mean, you couldn't catch anything, couldn't throw anything, couldn't run anything. But if you just look at that second half, Memphis lost the game 21-20 in that second half. Total yards, you outgained Mississippi State 265 to 253. Your third down was 3 for 7. You were 43%. So there's glimmers there. Total plays, you had more plays than Mississippi State. Average yards per play was better than Mississippi State. Where you lost was time of possession. You still lost the time of possession in the second half. So there's some things you can look forward to or look at and be like, that wasn't half bad. But if you take a step back and look at the whole entire game, it was completely awful. But I still say, look at that second half. When Memphis got punched in the mouth, it took them a good two quarters to realize, oh, okay, this is a football game. I actually gonna have to play. So yeah, you got punched in the mouth, but you came back nicely. That like I said, I just point to that second half when they realized, okay, let's start playing a game. We can play with these guys. We beat them last year. We can beat them again. Just a terrible first half. But yeah, look at that second half. Going into the Navy game, I guess I'm not as bummed, or fans shouldn't be as bummed because of what they did in that second half.
I mean, I get it, I guess. But I'm a little bitter because I'm the guy that sat through a 2-hour and 15-minute weather delay and just talk about hot and humid. Mississippi State, for those who didn't hear me complain on Twitter, has an open air press box, but they failed to invest in fans. So it was hot and it was sticky. But I guess in the second half you were better, but then I just look and I say, okay, well, who was on the other side of the ball defensively? And if you take out the Jay Ducker 50-yard touchdown run in the second half, we still only had 70 rushing yards, which was better than the first half by far, but still just nothing to, I didn't take anything good from this other than Jay Ducker's got a burst, man. That kid can run. Like I was shocked we didn't see him until the game was out of hand. But he's as I heard coaches say, he's got some wiggle to him a little bit. He can kind of get up and down the field. He's a good player. And I thought Seth really settled down in the second half, but nobody helped Seth. Like we had 6 drop. Coach Silverfield said 6, and I'm remembering like 8 or 9 drop passes. But it was just one of those games that, you take some good stuff from. You take Jay Ducker running well. You take uh, Jalen Allen being all over the place. Quindell played really well, had an interception and a fumble recovery. But you take that and then you throw on top of that how poorly you played. You lost Pounders at one point in the first half. You lost Sincere Evans, and who was the other linebacker we lost? Taylor. Name totally escapes me right this second. But anyway,
Tyler Murray.
That's it. So you lost 2 of your starting linebackers at one, or you a starter and a backup, and you lost one of your better offensive linemen. And that was a game that at halftime, I think I remember just making the commentary that we have approached. Let's get everybody out of here and don't get anybody hurt territory. And then that didn't even work. So Larry, I turn to you to be a positive Paul here in this situation to my negative Nancy.
Well, let me just say what happened here was that we played scared and intimidated in the first half, and there's no other way to say that. They went in afraid they were going to get their ass kicked. You could see the way they played, the way they called, and the coaches too, by the way. They coached like they were wanting to not lose. They were coaching conservatively. They weren't making any. We talked about it on Twitter. I'm sorry, we were texting that they weren't being aggressive defensively. They were laying back, letting Rodgers have whatever he wanted, and it wasn't until the game was completely out of hand and Mississippi State was like, okay, then we came out of our shell. I don't understand it. Like it was, and I'm not going to be negative here. I'm going to be real. It's easier to play when there's nothing to play for, which is exactly what happened in the second half. It's 35-3. Like the game's over. It's decided. And at that point, then we started to play well. Well, I'm sorry, guys, that you can't. It's too late now. And I'm glad that they came. And again, we did see some good stuff from Drucker. We saw some good. I thought Seth actually played. I actually went back and rewatched the game because I guess I'm a little bit of a masochist, and I thought Seth actually played really well. He found receivers. He made the right reads. John, you're right. Six is not correct. There was multiple. The long pass where the kid just stuck his hands out and the ball went right through his hands. We ended up scoring on that drive, fortunately. But it's like, come on, man. Like I'm gonna look. Everybody's gonna say I'm gonna throw Coach under the bus. I'm not. I am, but I'm not. They were intimidated. They were scared of the environment. They'd been hearing about was going to be a tough place to play, and they went down there and they were scared they were going to get their ass kicked. That's exactly, to me, the body language, everything just looked like, please don't hurt us.
The body language was bad in warm-ups. And I think the most frustrating thing to me on the defensive side of the ball, and again, we're not going to spend a bunch of time on this game. The most frustrating thing to me, Bryan, was that Mississippi State literally did nothing different than last year. I went back and I watched some of last year's tape. They did nothing different on Saturday. They flared backs out of the backfield. They ran little square ends. They ran the little off tackle play with Marks a few times. Like their game was a carbon copy. And I realize we have a new coordinator, but you have the tape and you know who Mike Leach is. He's not going to change who he is. He doesn't believe in running the ball. To him, those little flare outs are his version of a run. But we look like we had never seen that offense before.
Well, there was also you're not in the same place as you were last year. So to me, that crowd, that atmosphere did have a lot to play with, to go with it. And the you have different personnel on defense. I mean, you have two, if I'm not mistaken, two new linebackers that didn't play in last year's game. You had two, I think, another two defensive linemen that didn't play in last year's game. So I don't know. I just yes, I know it's a new defensive coordinator. You could take a look at, hey, let's just do the same thing we did last year. But even if you did that, it's still a different atmosphere with new players. And I just think that they came out and really punched Memphis in the mouth, and it took them a while to get adjusted. I think they were stunned. Obviously, they were stunned for the first two quarters. It just, I chalk it up to a lot. Yeah, the coaches have to take responsibility. Yes, because I mean the players didn't respond early because there was a ton of missed tackles. I mean, it's just the missed tackles and the drop passes were huge. I mean, there were very few plays, and Tim Cramsey talked about it in today's presser with that run that Jay Ducker had. All 11 players did what they were supposed to do. That's the reason that play was successful. You didn't have that too many of those plays. I mean, you could count on one hand how many plays that all 11 players did their job. And I think that atmosphere, the players weren't ready. I don't think the coaches were ready for that type of atmosphere. I mean, you could tell Mississippi State was ready, and they came out rocking and rolling.
But my response to that is, what the hell do you expect going to an SEC school that you beat last year, albeit to them somewhat controversially? That's my whole thing with it. What I agree with both of you. But what the hell did you expect to happen? Did you expect to go down there and not hear a cowbell and not love their team? I mean, you guys, I played some audio an hour and a half before the game, just the student section in there. You couldn't hear. It was deafening, but it didn't surprise me. I knew what we were walking into, other than, again, an open air press box where we had to hear that for 5 hours and 35 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm really concerned when I hear people say, well, they just didn't know what they were walking into. Well, then, but one thing I'll get to real quick before Mike James joins us, Steve Sarkisian, boy, talk about a guy that started a firestorm. He basically said out loud what I've been saying for years. And I think, Larry, this kind of gets to your point about the game planning. He basically said, look, it doesn't matter if we beat Alabama or not on Saturday. What does it matter? It's a non-conference game. Kudos to him for finally saying the quiet part out loud. I bet if you polled 70% of coaches, they would be happier playing 9 games and them all be conference games. Not a single non-conference.
All conference games and bye games.
Yeah.
100%.
Because there's nothing good came out of Saturday really for either team. Because we looked really bad, except again in the second half, and Mississippi State looked great. I didn't look at their schedule. So who have they got next week? So are they going to come out and are they going to be flat because they put one on Memphis's tail end? They kicked our tail. I think the kids call that a woodshed, trip to the woodshed. And how are they going to feel? So I just, I've never been a huge fan of these, quote, big non-conference games. And it's also like I told everybody, all these new Tiger fans, circa 1980-ish to 1997, 98-ish, maybe even into the 2000s, Memphis used to play 4 games like that a year, where we would play these big-time schools, and then we would get to conference play, and we were down. I remember one year we were down like 9 starters, and everybody's like, well, why do you lose all your conference games? Well, we just got the hell beat out of us for 4 weeks in a row at the beginning of the season. So again, I just, there's not a lot to talk about with Saturday. It was just.
But there's also a flip side, because when Memphis schedules, the quote unquote cupcakes, you'll have people out there. Why are we playing these people? Why are we playing North Alabama? Why are we playing North Texas?
Well, good point. But my whole problem with it is I don't want to travel to those places.
Right.
That's my whole thing. I don't mind playing North Texas or North Alabama, but like, why in the hell is Virginia Tech going to Old Dominion? Like, well, why? Why is North Carolina going to Appalachian State? Like,
boy, did they get lucky.
What do you expect to happen like that? But anyway, so Well, I mean, I guess we just need to have a tape burning party, and I'm sure that's the message from the coaches is, you know what? We went down there, we did a few good things in the second half, and we got our butts kicked. So, anyway, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to step aside for just a minute, and when we come back, we will have Mike James from the Mid Report. He'll join us to talk all things Navy. You're listening to Tigers Tonight. Looking to get away from it all? Hey, it's John here with Tropical Getaways Travel. And when I'm not following the Tigers, I help families and groups have their next amazing vacation. Maybe you're looking for a cruise, or maybe it's an all-inclusive resort that you've been dreaming of. Either way, I can help you plan a vacation that fits your budget and your lifestyle. When you're ready to start planning that vacation, give me a call at 901-667-8747. That's 901-667-8747. Or you can visit my website at tropicalgetaways.net. Let's start planning your next amazing vacation. Bryan Moss, Larry Marley here with you this evening. And now we bring in Mike James from the Mid Report to talk all things Navy. Mike, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
Excellent. So Memphis and Navy get teed up on Saturday afternoon at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium. Mike, it was a tough start to the year for Navy as they fell to the Fighting Joe Flacco's of Delaware 14-7. Navy fumbled the ball 3 times after only fumbling 5 times last year in total. So what happened on Saturday?
You know, it's kind of before the game, I wrote that this was a must-win game for Navy, which is kind of a strange thing to say about an FCS opponent in the season opener. But given the way Navy has played the last 2 years, you really wanted them, particularly on offense, to come out with showing a little something, and they just didn't. I mean, the defense was dominant. You give them that, but the offense they could barely break the huddle. It was really painful to watch. Just a slew of, I mean, you name the problem and it happened. That just with the turnovers, missed assignments, and just functionally just didn't seem like they had any answers. And it's not like Delaware was showing them anything that they hadn't seen. In fact, Delaware played defense in a way that Memphis has over the last few years. Schematically, but just individually, there's just so many miscues that it was really tough to watch.
Defensively, though, I thought Navy did pretty well, and for the past couple of years, they, to me, in my opinion, I know they've been down, but defensively they're getting better, each year. Is for this team this year, if Navy's going to be successful, does that defense, just do they have to be, play fantastic to get them over the edge or get them over the hump?
Yeah, they really do. And it's kind of a shame because the defense has a chance to be really good. And if the offense could just reach that level of an average Navy offense that we've kind of gotten used to seeing over the last, 15, 20 years, this could be a really good Navy team. And if the offense ever does figure it out, then I think that yeah, they would have a chance to be good. Now that's a big if. But yeah, the defense has come a long way. Once upon a time, Navy was kind of a bend but don't break type of defense, really for the better part of the last 2 decades. 2019 rolls around, Brian Newberry brings in a new approach, and it's really served Navy well. He's just very good defensive mind, and the players are confident in knowing where they have to go, and they play fast, and it shows, and it showed again on Saturday.
So you guys played really well at the end of the season. Well, you had a really good game at the end of the season. You beat Army, and a kind of a tough season ends on a really high note. Was there a lot of I don't know, maybe there was some feeling that, okay, Navy is getting ready to turn it around, or at least get back to being more respectable the way they were, say, in the mid 2010s. And so, how big of a disappointment is this showing on Saturday?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge, and it puts immense pressure on the coaching staff now. So I mentioned the 2019 season. In 2018, Navy finished 3-10 that year, and the Kenya Matalolo let go of most of the defensive staff and brought in Brian Newberry as defensive coordinator. And when he did that, he was kind of saying, "Look, the offense is fine. It's the defense that's the problem. So we're going to go fix that." 2019 rolls around, Mids, win 11 games, everything's great. Pandemic hits, Mids are down again. You kind of see that as being sort of an excuse, in a way. I mean, not without, some merit. But now, Ken Niumatalolo has kind of backed himself into a corner in a bit, saying, "Look, we practiced normally this year. Things are looking good. Things are back to normal. We should be up and running." And then you come out and have an offensive performance like they did on Saturday. Now you've already fixed the defense. If the offense isn't fixed, if the offense is a problem, now what do? There's only one answer. You have to replace the offensive staff, which includes Niumatalolo, which it pains me in my gut to even suggest it, but that's kind of the situation that they're facing right now. There's a lot of pressure, and there are no you really have to kind of, not that coaches wouldn't anyway, but every single game has so much riding on the line where there's a lot of pressure. The offense has to step up.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the last 5 years are fuzzy, but there was a situation a couple years ago with Irvin Jasper, right? The offensive coordinator, where the AD lets him go, and then Niumatalolo has to hire him back, and so it just seemed like there was some turmoil there. But getting back on the field a little bit, the Navy offense is predicated on the quarterback, right? Like, it's predicated on that guy knowing what he's doing on every play. That's where Navy's really struggled the last couple of years. Is there anybody on the roster, be it freshman that's not playing or whatever, that you think can get Navy back to being, as you said, even an average Navy offense?
Well, I don't think that necessarily that the quarterbacks on the roster aren't capable of it. It's just that their experience just hasn't led them to a point where they'll be able to do it. The way service academies work is that they are, more than any other schools, are extremely dependent on player development. If you look at the way the service academy recruiting works, they bring in 50 guys in a recruiting class, because there are no athletic scholarships. Since everyone at the school is on scholarship, you can bring in as many guys as you want. And what you do is you bring in a bunch of guys and you develop them over 4 years so that they can do their one thing super well. So because your recruiting class is so big, and one guy gets hurt, you get another senior stepping in to replace him. You're kind of priming the pump. You're keeping that level of experience going. There are no seniors in the quarterback room right now. Ty Lavatai is a junior, but even if you look at the pandemic season, they didn't practice normally. So even that base freshman year of learning the offense, he didn't have that. So he's kind of being thrown into the fire. And any guy in that actually, you know what? I take it back. There is one senior in the quarterback room, but still, the same concept applies. Though is there, that level of experience of just built up knowledge just isn't there. Now, that's kind of, yes, that's true. But that being said, he did have, he played all of last year, got better as the year went on. You figure, okay, you have a spring, you have a fall, knowing you're the number one guy, you hope he can kind of step it up. And, I don't want to put too much on one game. It's just, right. And even quarterback, Ty didn't have a great game. He was not alone. You could put Malcolm Perry in that game, and Navy still wouldn't have looked good. So you don't want to hang it all on a quarterback, but that's just kind of the reality across the roster. It's just very few seniors on this team, and for a service academy, that usually spells disaster.
Well, before Brian jumps in here, you guys don't have the benefit that a Memphis has. You can't go and hit the transfer portal or give guys a bunch of NIL money. So, your roster kind of is what it is.
It is, NIL stuff, it changes things, but the kind of guy that goes to the Naval Academy anyway, they're that, it's a cliche about the not a 4-year experience, but a 40-year experience. But, at Navy, the cliche really rings true. You just got, you attract that kind of guy that's looking for, a career and a future through the school. So NIL money might not sway. I don't think it changes the type of player that's coming to the service academies to begin with. Transfer portal is a whole different ballgame. If the pandemic was really hard at the Naval Academy, it was really locked down, even above and beyond the other service academies. At Army, they sent their football team to a hotel to isolate them. At Air Force, back when the Mountain West thought they were going to play a spring season, they sent guys home. Navy didn't do any of that. They were locked down in the dorm, and it's when you're talking about having to do social distancing in a dorm where everyone lives in the same building, you are locked down, and it was just a miserable experience for a lot of guys, and a lot of guys just left, which is why you're kind of left with this a lack of a senior class now. And when you have you bringing up the transfer portal, for most schools it giveth and it taketh away, but at Navy it just taketh away, and you just had a lot of guys leave, and it kind of leaves the team in the personnel situation where they are now. Physically, they're as good as any Navy team. The best Navy teams, they measure up on the stopwatch, but that's when everything you do is based on, and you can see that on defense, but on offense, it's all about repetitions and execution, which you only build up over time. And the team just is playing like they just don't have that level of experience.
When you take a look at Coach Ken's career, I think he only had one losing season in his first 10 years, but he has, I think, 3 losing seasons in his last 4. How's the, the Naval Academy looking at him? Is there pressure on him to produce this year? And do you think, if he has another bad year, that he may step away?
He is such a competitor that I have a hard time imagining that him ever voluntarily stepping away.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of pressure on him. Like as I mentioned before, it's the pressure is on the offense right now. I mean, I hate to kind of point fingers, but that's really kind of the situation. And the offense is Ken Yamato. That's what he brings to the table, at least X's and O's wise. He has a lot of the other things. I mean, you couldn't have a better figurehead in front of your program. But in terms of X's and O's, the offense, that's what he brings to the table. And if the offense doesn't perform, it's tough. And again, it just really kills me to even say these words because he has meant so much to the school. But I mean, at some point, how many seasons can you struggle? I mean, it's not even like the offense is playing well and just making a few hiccups here and there. They just don't look like they have a clue. You don't want to put too much on just one game, but it was just so disheartening because there was, a considerable amount of optimism coming into the season, and that to lose, not just losing to Delaware. I mean, upsets happen, but to lose the way they did, their defense was that dominant, and the offense just couldn't do anything with it. I'd say there's a lot of pressure. Now, there are some financial questions around this too, because one of the things, again, going back to the pandemic, the Naval Academy athletic department, a lot of athletic departments across the country were cutting teams, letting guys go, cutting salaries. They didn't do any of that. So I don't know how much money they have on hand, and I don't know if keeping what Coach Niumatalolo's buyout is, because that's not public. But I don't know if they can afford to have any dead weight on the books. So that might factor into this a little bit. But if that wasn't a factor, then yeah, I would say that there is absolutely pressure to win this year. And even if it is a factor, it's still probably there.
The way the conference realignment, we talked about this some last year, the way the conference realignment is shaking out and the NIL, do you think that changes how Navy views conference affiliation?
Well,
I'm
to
just
answer
curious.
that question real quick, if anything, it probably makes it even more likely that it makes it more apparent that they made the right choice. I mean, who knows what the future holds? Who knows what is in store for the American? But if you look at the new, if you look at the new playoff arrangement, it's top 6 conferences. Every conference race matters, and if you're not in a conference, you're not part of the conversation. Just the bottom line. Notre Dame excluded, of course, but yeah, it makes it the biggest factor for Navy joining a conference was, it's kind of a nebulous concept, but it's just relevancy, where Navy uses the football program basically as an advertisement for the school. It just raises awareness for the school, which is crucial to being able to reach potential midshipman candidates. And when Navy, when they're good, they'll be part of like a playoff conversation now. When they're not good, they're at least playing other teams that are part of a playoff conversation, not just at the beginning of the year where you might, buy a body bag game or something, but in October and November, when you're part of these races, you're part of the conversation, you're getting the Navy name out there. It's part of the mission of the school is why they joined the conference. And I don't see that as changing. I think the way things are evolving, it makes it even more critical to be a member of the American.
All right, one more for me. That just when you talked about the conference realignment, do you ever see a time where Army joins? Because I would love to have Army and Navy in the same conference. I think it was pre-pandemic, but one of the last AAC media days, I asked a bunch of the Navy guys, they would love to have Army in a conference or in the same conference. How does, I guess, Navy fans, how would they feel about that? Because I was asking them, I was like, well, if you're in the same conference, how would you do the Army Navy game? And their answer was like, instead of playing the last game of the year, just move it to the first game of the year where we're still the only game on the schedule. We kick off college football. And I was like, I didn't know what to think of that because Army Navy's, everyone thinks of it the last game of the year. But what were your thoughts on that?
So I don't know if I can speak for fans, but my own thoughts, I would hate to have the Army Navy game as the first game of the year. I would despise it. The game just screams freezing cold Philadelphia, end of the year, just all the autumn wind is a Raider kind of stuff on a college football level. To me, that's Army Navy, and it's there is no better way to cap a football season than with a game like that. I think it would lose a lot to be the first game of the year. So that's my opinion. With Army, they're kind of content the way they are now. The question with Army is not if it was up to them, they would not join a conference. Their foray into Conference USA is kind of viewed internally there as the biggest disaster. Now, they could have remained independent and have hired Todd Berry, and they wouldn't have been any better. But to them, conference membership was part of that. And to be frank, they do not want to play the schedules that Navy has over the last couple of years. And I'm not saying that as like a chest thumping thing, but that's just kind of blunt. And they shouldn't. If you were looking at trying to rebuild their program, have a manageable schedule, win some games, and then weigh your options. So completely understandable for them to think that way. The question with Army is whether it ever reaches a point with the evolution of just with the playoff and with conference expansion, if it ever reaches a point where they have no choice. If that's the case, I think the American would love to have them because, I mean, you look at who's available out there. What kind of name brands are out there in expansion? None. You're looking at, the Army name means more than anyone you can pull from like the Sun Belt or something. Excuse me. So I think for Army, they're content where they are. It's just they have to keep their ear to the ground to see how things are shifting, and if it ever reaches a point where they have no choice.
So before we let you go, just one more question. I think there was an article today. There seems to be this long run of Navy captains of the team from either the Memphis or Nashville area. One of the things that we've always talked about is Navy has been insistent on being in the West because they recruit Texas heavily, obviously, and they recruit Tennessee. So talk a little bit about the kind of that Tennessee connection, because they get a lot of kids from this area.
They really do. And I've talked with Ashley Ingram, the run game coordinator and offensive line coach, who recruits Memphis, about what it is that makes Memphis so important to Navy. And what he told me was kind of interesting. He had some personal connections, and he thought that just based on the way the private school culture is in the area, that they would be able to find a lot of guys that could fit at the Naval Academy academically. And what they found is that it wasn't just the private schools in the area where that's the case. They come in, they're looking at a lot of the bigger private schools, and they found that they found a similar quality of not just player but student in particular to Memphis that made it kind of a hotbed. Now everyone's recruiting Memphis. Now all the service academies are there, but it was kind of Navy leading the way just because of really the high school culture of the area.
So last thing before we let you go, what do you see happening on Saturday?
It's really tough to say, and it's you want to talk about matchups and you want to talk about X's and O's and schemes, but for Navy, it's a lot of it is just they got to look inward on offense and just run the option. That's they haven't been able to do their bread and butter for 3 years now. Well, 2 years in a game. So for them, if they can, regardless of how Memphis lines up and what matchups there are, if Navy can run their offense, they'll have a chance, because I think their defense is good enough to at least keep the mids in the game if they're not on the field too much. But I mean, if Navy comes out looking like they have, not just against Delaware, but really the last 2 years, yeah, it's going to end up like last year's game, which is, it's tough. But there's like I said, there's a lot of pressure on the offense to get it done. So, we'll see.
Tell everybody how Memphis fans can follow Navy this week.
So my website is themidreport.com. You can follow the Mid Report on Twitter. You can follow me at Navy Bird Dog on Twitter. I'll be tweeting through the week.
Awesome, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It's Mike James with the Mid Report. Gentlemen, well. What do we have here? Larry, we'll start with you. Saturday looms 2:30 p.m. It'll be on CBS Sports Network in beautiful, scenic, crime-free Annapolis, Maryland. Let's get your thoughts.
Well, this is a game that Memphis really needs. They need to bounce back and play well. I think they will. The Navy offense, I know it's one game, and I think the Navy offense will play better this week. But I just think Memphis has too much firepower. I'm going to make a very bold prediction. Memphis does finally have its first 100-yard rusher in over a year, calendar year this week. I think Memphis does run the football. We definitely have more explosive players, and Memphis wins this game. I think I said earlier in the year, it's going to be lower scoring, but it's going to be something like 28-10 or 31-10, something like that.
Bryan?
I think it's going to be sort of similar to last year's score. I think Memphis will have a breakout game. I said it in the preseason show that I thought Memphis would blow Navy out. Navy's defense is better than I thought it was, so I don't think it'll be a complete blowout, but I do see Memphis winning something like 37-21.
Yeah, I've got 24-10 because, the Memphis offense is going to have to visit Missouri this week and show me. I mean, we can talk a big game and we can talk about how great Seth is and how great the running back room is and the wide receiver room, and that's all well and good. But at some point, that's got to translate on the field. And I just don't think Navy has enough offensive oomph to stay with Memphis. But that being said, I don't think Memphis's offense is going to necessarily be a juggernaut. But I think that Memphis's advantage in athleticism really is what helps Memphis win this game. I just think that's where they have a decided advantage. And that really plays out, guys, in special teams, right? That's where your guys, your athleticism really plays out. I say this all the time, and it's probably not really true this year, but Mississippi State's first 11 versus Memphis's first 11, they're pretty evenly matched. The problem is when Mississippi State went to that second 11, and when Memphis went to their second 11, it's not quite as good as Mississippi State. And the other place, Larry, that shows up is on kickoff returns, punt coverage, kickoff coverage.
And one thing we didn't really talk about when we recapped the last game, our special teams were actually very good this weekend. And everything you just said, our kicking was excellent, perfect to be exact. Our kickoffs were very good. Our kickoff coverage was very good, and our punt coverage was very good. Like we didn't. Field position was not really an issue. It was giving up 85-yard drives. That was the issue. So to your point, yeah, I could totally see a special teams play being a big factor in this. Memphis gets a long punt return, or Memphis gets a kickoff return that sets us up in a short field situation, something like that. Because again, once you get a lead on Navy, they're just not built to come back, which is exactly what happened last year. We got up double digits, and that was, midway through the second quarter. And that was basically the game.
Yeah, I'll go, Larry, you made a bold prediction. It's probably may not be this game, but Bryan, Gabe Rogers is going to break one this year. He really impressed me on Saturday with his vision, and he was a guy that he saw his lane and he just hit it. And I feel like may not be this week, but he's going to break a couple big ones this year.
Oh yeah, no, and it's finally good to have someone back there that's Tony Pollard-esque that could break one. So yeah, I can. If he doesn't do it against Navy here pretty soon, you'll definitely see. I'd say more than a few big ones. I can see at least two return for touchdowns this year, but we'll see. But yeah, it's good to see special teams after last year. Boy, is it really good to see special teams on point this year. The kicking game, no worries whatsoever.
Yeah, Noah Grant put 3 of his 4 kickoffs through the end zone, not just in the end zone. And like I said, Gabe Rogers had a really good game as well. So the game takes place on Saturday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. It'll be on CBS Sports Network. And that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks to Mike James from the Mid Report for stopping by and chatting about all things Navy. And we will be back next week, same time, same bat channel. And we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Audio podcast will be up here a little later this evening. You've been listening to Tigers Tonight, and we'll talk to everybody this next week.